Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Vision radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear. Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Vision radio show. Today is May 2nd, 2017. I cannot believe it's May 2nd. It's 8 o'clock in the morning here, and I want to thank my guest today for working around our schedule and allowing Carl Grossman to just jump in on Friday. Matt Hulstrunk is here. He's a citizen scientist who keeps track of the EPA and frankly told me a little bit of shocking information right before we got on the air, so that kind of made my eyes pop out. So, Matt, thank you for being a friend of our show and coming back. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, Lonnie. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so Matt has been following the EPA records and the statistics from around the country and here in Corvallis, Oregon, where he lives. Matt, I have a question to ask you. Have you seen a difference between on the EPA records before Trump came in office? Is there any change in the statistics or anything that's significantly different?
Well, that's an interesting question, Lonnie, because there've been quite a few changes. Some really large changes that actually surprised me. I would say the first one, and if I look back just in a year's time, 1 year ago from today, they had they have their site and you can download data and look at it. And their site was, at that time, 1 year ago, it was limited to 400 hours that you could download on any given stretch of time. And just prior to Trump coming in, they expanded that to about 10,000 hours, which is an incredible expansion to probably their server capability. I'm not really sure what that
Say that again. What did they expanded it from what to what?
From 400 hours that you were able to download, data that you could download on your computer, to 10,000 hours. So they sped up the process. They sped up the process for everybody to download data from the EPA Radnet site. And that was surprising to me. That was almost like, well, maybe they're trying to get this information out to everybody before Trump shuts the EPA down.
Before he guts it all, because that's what I've heard they're doing. It's just they're shredding information. They're gutting things.
Right. So that was probably the biggest thing. And of course, I wasn't getting the whole 10,000 when I tried downloading. I was getting about half of that, but still, I was a factor of 10 times, at least 10 times greater than it was, which has really helped me in looking at everything across the whole country and seeing what's out there. And then just recently, I noticed that they had given us some years that I wasn't able to access before, some earlier years with data that, appears to be, how can I put this? Data that appears to be instrument calibration type stuff when the monitors first got online. So you're seeing really crazy highs and on some of the data and then you see that it looks like they manipulate them down to a point where they think they should be calibrating them with whatever sources they think are baseline. So that's the other thing. All this there's been about a half dozen new years for different sites that they just let out. So prior to a couple months ago, I could only access back to, let's say in Corvallis, back to 2011. And now they've given me, I think, 2 more hours in Corvallis. I see LA has another 4 hours going all the way back to 2006 now. But the data is
4
pretty spotty.
Hours or years, you mean?
Oh, well, years actually. But yeah, hours worth of yearly data. So
with that data, do you see a difference? I mean, do you think it's real data, or like, do you see any difference in the spike of radiation of when Fukushima happened to, say, a few years ago that they just newly released? Have you seen a dramatic difference?
Well, I was always pretty curious as to why they weren't letting me see the prior data. You know, all of a sudden they'd show me 2011 data, and it's like, and I was saying to myself, well, they don't want me to look back and compare last year to this year, right? Mm-hmm. They don't want me to compare 2010 to 2011. Then I could say, yeah, there's definitely an issue here. Well, when I start looking now at this data that they're backloading on us and giving us this older data, I see that there's a lot of high data even back then. A lot of high readings, much higher than I would have expected. And large blockouts of data too, which to me, when I see large blockouts.
You mean in Corvallis or around the country?
Around the country, all over, including Corvallis. There's been it looks like there's been some large radioactive incidents that have happened that were, well, some of them look on almost the same scale as the Fukushima stuff that I've seen. Not quite that bad, but I mean, stuff where they will block out data for months. All over the country. All over the country. 2010 in particular, there's a big one, and I haven't been able to quite pin it down, but it appears to be the northern part of the country.
The northern part, like New York northern or Wisconsin northern?
Middle of the country northern, almost like on the Canadian border up there. I gotta look at it a little bit harder and see if I can pinpoint what sites were impacted the greatest with the biggest blackouts. But it's a period of time where a lot of them have a similar blackout, but not exact. If I see exact blackouts, then I figure it's probably an EPA software issue change or something where they took a bunch of sites down to do some changes internally. But when I see large blockouts that aren't exactly time specific, those are the ones that have radiological implications to them.
Do you think they intentionally did that to screw up the data, or they just didn't even look at what they were releasing?
I don't know. I mean, that's the possibility that it's now being backloaded to try to hide what happened too. You know, maybe make things higher than they were, so now the current stuff looks lower than it is. I don't know. I don't know what the problem was with not giving that data out. I just don't understand. And all it would take would be a simple explanation from the EPA on that.
Be curious to see what they say, or if it was just an unintentional thing, because Well, actually, did you hear that the budget they passed till June, or I think it goes till December, actually. Don't you love the way they always do it right before Christmas or right before the holidays? Like this is their little gift to America. But anyways,
Well,
I mean, we're not even we're not even like we're a fiscal year country. We don't even go December to December, but they always make these budget cuts right at December or right at these big announcements. It's grotesque. But back to the budget, they basically kept the EPA intact except for 1%. They sliced out 1%.
oh, is that all they did?
Yes.
I thought it was going to be
Okay,
more
so
like
now
30% chopping. Yeah.
if we're
Interesting.
keeping the budget of the EPA, they
Uh-huh.
fired a bunch of people. It is really gutted. Like there's a lot of people that are just not in those places. I think, and there's also that House bill that says that the EPA shuts down on December 31st, 2017.
Uh,
Or 18. It's right after this year. It's right. It's like
18.
right after the elections. That was right after the general elections. They passed it. Now it hasn't gone through the Senate, but the bill literally says two bills close the Department of Education and one to close the EPA.
Wow. Well,
So
it'll be interesting to see what happens with that.
yes, it's going to be interesting, especially with these reports that you're giving, because it seems like this would be my take, don't you think, is that they basically just put out information thinking that they were just going to gut this thing, and they're not going to. Then what?
Yeah. Well,
Be
I
curious
don't
to
think
see if your work tightens up in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I don't think the Trump administration really realizes that the EPA Radnet system was put on a critical infrastructure list by Department of Homeland Security. So once that's on that list,
What does that
I don't
mean?
think
Tell me,
I
what do you mean
I
by
don't
that, though?
well what it means is it's a vital thing that the Department of Homeland Security has said it's a vital thing for national security or whatever reason they want to put on it, but it's something that is going to be set in stone and can't be cut from a budget. So I don't see how they can mess with their Radnet system unless they just toggle off the public from seeing it. That would be the only thing that I could see. They just hit the switch, and then we can no longer see it. You need a passcode to get in, like in the olden days when it was ERAMs back in the old days before. Probably before 2006, nobody could get into it without a special passcode. So maybe they'll go back to that system. I don't know.
Wow, I didn't know that.
That would be unfortunate. That'd be unfortunate. Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
most people didn't even know about Radnet.
Let's talk about. Is there any news in the radiation levels that are notable that you've noticed? Anything different in the work you've been doing then lately? Is there anything that's notable?
I've been really concentrating on grabbing data lately. I have been monitoring the local site here with my own detector, and I've seen minor fluctuations up and down, nothing serious. My detector, I think I was getting a couple of readings up in the 60s ranges for a couple of days, but typically it hovers 40s, 30s, 20s, in that range. And I have
here in Eugene,
on,
every meter I've seen here in Eugene, usually it averages 12 to 18. A few days it'll go up to 24.
Right, I've got a pretty sensitive one, so mine's probably twice as sensitive as those.
Yeah, because we just have these
nice
little
pancake.
cheap meters. Do you think
Right.
I mean, you think you can, when we go out and we have these little cheap meters that we're all like, oh, we need at least something, we could at least double what we get on those meters? Would that be a reasonable thing to expect?
Well, I think everybody's got to get comfortable with the meter they have. It's really hard to compare meters across a broad spectrum. So
Mm-hmm.
my meter will be different than your meter, and that's going to be different from the Radnet meter. But what I'm trying to do is figure out how my meter equals Radnet's meters, and how my meter equals your meter. And so it's a conversion factor when you go between meters. So you'd have to take yours, and if you want to compare it to mine, maybe it's double. If it's yours and you want to compare it to Radnet, maybe it's times 10 or 20. I don't know. I don't know what that conversion is. I haven't really searched really hard on those. And it depends on the meter. You know, they're all different. They all have different types of tubes, different types of detectors. You know, a lot of them are a tube detector. I have a pancake detector on mine, which is pretty sensitive. It's probably like twice as sensitive as most of them. And the Radnet ones use ones they use high airflow through there, so they're sucking, 10 times the airflow through. So theirs are going to be 10 times greater just for that fact alone. So it's hard when you're looking at meters to say, unless you have the exact same meter and you have similar background radiation too. That has a lot to do with it. Elevations, and if you have a lot of thorium deposits or uranium deposits nearby, or that can certainly skew the data quite a bit. Elevation has a lot to do with it too.
I'm just sort of nonplussed that we're sitting here talking about radiation levels, Matt. I don't know how you feel about it, but I never in my life thought that we'd be like accepting the fact that we're living in a radiated environment.
Yeah, 10 years ago, I would never have guessed I would be in this position. I am never, not in a million years.
Speaking of that, let's urge our friends who are in Oregon, and actually I hope people that are in Idaho and nearby states will call our state representative, Nina Kotek, Kotek, at 503-986-1200, or 1200, I guess not. It's 1200. It's 503-986-1200, and her name is State Representative Tina Kotek. She's from Oregon. She is the committee chair in the House, and the bill that passed to start allowing individual cities to accept building SMRs, overriding state rules. So they're trying to get it passed in Oregon so that they can put the SMRs all in Oregon if a city wants it. So, like, for example, we live in Oregon, right, and Eugene, but Corvallis wants to build SMRs. Corvallis could pass its own rule that says, hey, we're going to override state law and we're going to build SMRs. So that's legislation that needs to be stopped. I'm sorry, they cannot build more SMRs. I about had a heart attack yesterday when I heard that from Nancy Newell.
Wow. Yeah, that's new. And I believe there's a state thing already on the books that says no nuclear reactors in Oregon.
Yes, that's what's the shocking about it. That's the shock about it. We already have that. It's been done for a long time. Yes.
And that was a people's initiative that put that through too, I believe. So what they're trying to do is again stomp on the people's will here. That's
Exactly. That's the point, is that they don't really care, except we're talking life and death issues. It's not about them ripping us off from billions of dollars anymore. We're talking about their willingness is to just destroy the Northwest, the lifeblood. If they destroy the Northwest, there's the environment here. The wind goes west to east, folks. Most of a lot of the food is right here, and we do have elevated radioactive levels here even. But I'm just nonplussed over this, Matt. So I thought I'd bring that up because that's just so outrageous.
Yes, it is. Yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Well, I'm going to mention it again before we end so that people can actually do that. So who's ever listening, go get your pencil and paper, and I'm going to give you her name again because it's very, very, very important. So, well, Matt, this has been my big curiosity about the general attitude about the EPA since the Trump nation came along. But what you're saying is that they're actually dumping more information?
Yeah, and I really found that sort of surprising and striking that they would actually
You know why
do that.
I bet?
I never would have guessed it. Well, with the exception that, I don't know, maybe somebody, I don't know who's doing it. It must be some high-level person. It's got to be. So.
You know who it is?
There's
Somebody who's about to lose their job, or somebody who doesn't have any more oversight. They're like, okay, let's just put this out. You think you're going to gut us? Click. You know? I mean.
Well, with the speed that they got there, there should be a few people out there, hopefully, that have all the data from that site now, with any luck.
Well, for sure the Russians probably have it all.
Yeah, I would imagine they would.
This is the really insane thing. Who was I talking to yesterday? The most insane part about our current history is, in 20 years ago, there would have been an indictment laid out. This thing with Mike Pence knew that Flynn was lying. They have withheld information that has been requested to the Senate and the Congress. They're refusing to give them any documents regarding Flynn. I mean, the paper trail is unbelievable. Yeah. And there are no indictments. There's no investigation, nothing there. And every Republican is saying, well, we think the investigations are going along just fine. We don't need to hire a special prosecutor. It is treason. I'm nonplussed over this. Do they not have any integrity?
Yeah. Well, it shows you the lack of their lack of accountability, and it also shows you how the Democrat Party is stepping right in line and not wanting to touch it. Which in my mind is it shows collusion between the parties.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a Green Party candidate as a vice president, or if the Green Party was in there and at a high level, there would be way more waves being made from all this stuff. I guarantee it.
Are you kidding? Could you imagine anybody being in that office and saying, I want my daughter to be my advisor who has no government experience?
Yeah.
None. Put her in with Angela Merkel as if she's a qualified leader. You know what I mean? Like, she hires people for 36 cents an hour in China to build her clothes. That's her qualifications on the world scene. She has no problem being a slave laborer.
And I'm sure in Trump's mind that makes her totally fit for the job.
Unbelievable. It's, so when we're talking about this EPA stuff, it's going to be interesting to see now that they aren't gutted, how it's going to go inside.
Yeah. I got a feeling it's gonna remain. That's my gut feeling. I think if it was not gonna remain, I wouldn't be seeing all this stuff right now. I think because Trump is in control of it. I mean, Pruitt's there now, and he is in control. Unless he has way more important things on his mind, and they might be doing things that will disrupt EPA even more. I mean, if they're concentrating on the coal aspect and then pushing forth the nuclear SMRs, maybe that's taken precedence over deleting some more minor stuff that that they're not really worrying about right now. I don't know.
Yeah, like maybe
it's a crazy game they're playing.
Well, what's going to be interesting to see is, I mean, they do have a lot of posts that are unfilled right now, because I think they were fighting to have it gutted. So now they have
I'm sure they do.
So I think this kind of lends itself to whistleblowing, and maybe that'll help. Maybe that's the blessing in disguise, because people will be mad and they'll just want to start giving us information.
Yeah, but the whistleblowers haven't had a real good run in the past few years, even with Obama.
Well,
So,
especially under Obama. Obama was the worst. I mean, do
yeah,
you know Obama prosecuted more whistleblowers than all the presidents before him
yeah,
combined? I mean, he took it. Same thing. I mean, it's because he's a lawyer. He's like, okay, this is the law. Let's go after it, man. And he leaned into it. It was just horrendous. And
yeah,
he is the one who lied to us about Fukushima and told us everything's fine. Go back to your places. We're fine. And then he and his kids and his wife go down to South America for 3 weeks.
yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. I was just looking through an old computer that I had back during 2011, and I had grabbed from the internet everything I could find, all the news, and copied it on this one page, and kept a running page of what was going on. And I just wanted to make sure I had that to see how things would change in the future. Go back and read it and see, wow, they're talking an awful lot about fuel pool burning up here and fires in the
Matt,
in
we ought
building
to
four.
we ought to talk about that. You ought to pull some of that, the most, because there are obvious lies that they are telling us now. Like they
Yeah,
forget that a few people really are listening, and a few people really do have the information. People did grab it off the internet, like you.
yeah, yep, yep.
I
And it's
mean,
safe away.
well, what you ought to do is, ponder through all that information, look through it, and figure out what's the most obvious when the next time you come back. Let's talk about that because they are heading full steam ahead into the lie world. Everything is a big lie. I mean, it's kind of funny we get all mad at Trump because his lies are just so stupid and obvious. We're so outraged, like, oh my God. I mean, he's just such an obvious. But, the only difference between him and Barack Obama is Barack Obama made it seem right. He's smoothed it down. I believed him for a long time about
Oh
Fukushima.
yeah. Well, he was a sincere sounding speaker. He had a good way
Yes.
with words. He knew how to talk. He knew how to make you believe. Trump isn't like that. Trump's too coarse. He's too, he wants to just say 3 words and be done with it. And that's not what it takes really to convince anybody. Obama was a master at that. He really was. But that's
Yeah.
the lawyer in him. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
lawyer from all
Yeah.
of his upbringing, and Trump has no lawyer background at all. I'm not sure what his background is other than just corporate. Uh,
Spoiled
corporate.
bratism. Let's be
Yeah,
clear.
spoiler.
I mean, for real. Well, this job's way harder than I thought. Really? You didn't think you were going to have to work hard being the president? You didn't think you'd lose your privacy? I mean, does he
Yeah,
have no concept? Is he completely on? That to me was the most frightening thing that he has said. Like, I think he's having, to be honest, I think they're setting him up to have him step down. In fact, I
he,
said this to my friend
yeah,
about a year ago. Trump's going to step down after 6 months. He's going to go in, put the wrecking ball crew in, shovel everything. It's like throw the wrecking ball around the room and then go, oh, I got to leave. And you know what? He won't get indicted. Nothing's going to happen
yeah,
to him. I mean, they're busy right now shredding documents in the White House. I guarantee it. They have no ethics. I know they're under an order not to shred, but they are.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe that's how the
That's my
EPA information got out.
yeah. Well, that was my thought exactly, Lonnie. That he'd spend. I figured he'd have a year in there, and then he'd exit stage left, and he'd leave Pence in there to run the whole show.
Uh-huh. American
And
Taliban. Step right
and then
up.
he'd leave with a big smile on his face, and all his corporate pals are patting him on the back and making him richer. I could definitely see that in him. And it won't surprise me when it happens because I think it will happen.
Yes, but the difference that they did not count on is Mike Flynn getting caught and
Yeah,
them being so dumb. And Mike Flynn doing some obvious things that led to them, and then Mike Pence lying about it. It's
yeah,
come out in the last few days. Mike Pence knew. He lied, straight up lied. They didn't fire Flynn when they came out with it for 3 weeks. They let him be national security advisor They fired the woman who said, "Hey, this guy's been meeting with Russian spies." And instead of saying thank you, she went to them and said, "You are being compromised because this guy could be very bad for you." They fired her and kept him for 3 weeks until public pressure forced him to leave.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
something is up with these guys. And this is the thing. This is what I mean about the EPA, though, because I'm wondering if this new information, I wonder, have you wandered around on their site and seen if other information is more readily available?
No, not really. I've been really focused on this one thing. It takes a lot of attention to do it because there's just so many. There's just so much. Any little issue I have gets multiplied by 140 because that's how many sites there are. So,
well, what do you mean by that?
There's about 140 Radnet sites around the country, different cities, different locations: Corvallis, Portland, Richland. On and on and on and on. Texas has probably the most down there for some reason.
Well, Matt, would you mind explaining how exactly you come up with your readings and how much time it takes? Like, explain to me. Do you go there every day?
On the Radnet stuff that I'm doing?
Yeah.
Well, I was going there every day. I mean, I was trying to get the data off of them. I wanted to get all the data. So I had a nice database. And so for easily the past 6 months, I've been basically doing full-time that. And it was really slow work, prior to that, before they sped the system up. It took me an incredible amount of hours to be able to download data for just 1 year and then correlate it and then check it and then sort it and check it and plug it and then graph it. I mean, that whole process took me, for 1 year graph, would take me at least a couple of days. At least.
So you said something when they sped it up. When did they speed up the system?
Well, they sped it up in the late winter of this year.
The late winter.
So it was like
16.
February or March, I think it was.
Right after the inauguration of the Trump nation.
Yeah, probably. Somewhere around there, yeah.
It'll be curious to see if the information slows down now that they know they're not going to be gutted. Or if there's going to be more information just put out there by somebody who doesn't like Pruitt just to get the information out, because they're not paying attention to what goes out.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, they'd have to open. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I sort of don't see that happen because they'll have to open up another level to Radnet. They'd have to go from the public arena to, I think they got three. I think it's 3 levels, at least 3 levels, or maybe even more. There's the public, what the public can see, and then there's a government level that's up above that probably is like Congress and some higher level people can see, and then there's one up above that, at least one up above that, maybe even 2 levels up above that, which is basically probably now corporate and military, probably that mix at the highest level. And
military, wow.
Corporate and military, yeah.
Wow.
So just the high heads of corporate, the CEOs of GE, Westinghouse, those type of guys can get access to that data. And
well, since you mentioned Westinghouse, you might know this answer. The Columbia Generating Station was produced by Westinghouse, right? It's manufactured by Westinghouse, put together and maintained. Basically, it's a Westinghouse product. Now that Westinghouse has gone bankrupt, where would we get spare parts, or if something went wrong with that, or parts that could upgrade it? Like, what happens? Do you know what happens with all of that?
Well,
or did they just get
the parts are one thing. The parts are usually just items that other subcontractors make. So to put a reactor together, you have a million different subcontractors that are supplying the different piping and the valves and the electronics and the wiring and the, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Westinghouse really was only responsible for manufacturing the reactor itself, I believe, the reactor core, and the design. And I'm not even positive that's a Westinghouse design. Are you sure about that? I thought it was a GE design. Is it a Westinghouse? I haven't. There's
That's what I thought.
There's so many reactors around. I haven't really got a good list of what make is in what area. I don't have a list of that. I need to get that.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying, so that's a Westinghouse unit there, huh?
Yeah, so I'm wondering what happens when that company goes bankrupt, the designs that it did do, what happens to their products? Do you have any idea about that?
I would guess they probably didn't have a warranty on it to begin with. It was probably, probably nothing you could say, hey, well, they probably have something. I got defective something. You got to fix it, to a point. But yeah, so as of right now, if there's major issues with the reactor that need to be fixed, it's all going to be custom parts, which are going to be very expensive. Or if it's some smaller issues, they may rob other reactors.
Yeah, that's what they do. They actually do try to do that.
Yeah, so they've been doing an awful lot of that, which is really nuts in my mind. If you're going to put a part in, you should really put a new part in rather than just using an old part that could fail again. Because if you get multiple parts failing at the same time, that's a certain recipe for disaster in a nuclear reactor. You certainly don't want that to happen. I mean, that was what happened at Fukushima when you had multiple things happen. They didn't have enough safety systems to make up the difference, and God help them if they have components that are failing when those safety systems need to come online, man. So so that's what's going to happen there with Westinghouse. It's interesting that they went under.
This is why I can't believe they're willing to build these SMRs. This is the most shocking thing, that the SMRs, that they're trying to get around what the people in Oregon wanted and put up these SMRs. It's, to me, a complete shock. And
it's all based on the fact that everybody knows that a new nuclear reactor facility at the megawatt scale that they are producing will go overrun by billions of dollars. I mean, they're just unbelievably expensive because they're so big and so complicated. And so they're hoping to get these smaller ones in, at a reasonable cost. I don't even know what they're going to be worth, a few million probably.
But this is the unethical part about it. Every nuclear facility is they've never been able to make them exactly alike. Not one.
Yeah.
You know what that says? Everyone is different because the product doesn't work. So they're experimenting every time.
Yeah, the only person that's ever been able to do that, make them all the same, was Admiral Rickover when he designed the submarine nuclear reactor for the subs. He built one prototype, and he made it fit inside a certain diameter. I mean, the guy really knew what he was doing. He was a real master at it, and he hated nuclear. He didn't even believe in nuclear. He thought it was really dangerous. Yeah, he's the father of the Navy nuclear, and he was so against nuclear that he banned his submarines and his ships from going to any major port in the U.S. if it wasn't a military base. He banned them just for the fact that he knew that if something went wrong, people would be exposed to radiation, and he did not want that. So he had a lot of trouble with working with industry because of that. But but he had a job to do, and he wanted to do it as good as he could, and
Wow.
he built probably the best nuclear reactor that they could. There was all sorts
Say
of.
his name again. Who is this man?
It's Hyman Rickover. He was
Rickover.
the admiral. He was an admiral. Yeah, he just died recently.
And he invented the nuclear submarine. He designed it.
Yep, he was the one put in charge to design the nuclear submarine and also the nuclear aircraft, which is, I think, is the same motor that they use in the aircraft carriers. And they had a couple of nuclear battleships too. I don't know if they're still even operational.
Wow.
So,
well, this
yeah,
is the really frightening part about what they're, how they're going to do it, because, in order to run a big organization like the United States, you need qualified people, and they are just really gutting administrations. I mean,
yeah.
Across the board, they're putting in the most obviously incompetent people in every place, every single place. Like the woman who is heading up, overseeing the site that administers the program that helps poor people get birth control and contraceptives. She's been gone on record saying that, well, birth control doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's, this guy Pruitt, oh, well, there's no greenhouse. Don't worry about it. They actually, I can't believe these people actually really believe that our planet is not having a problem. Call it greenhouse warming or whatever you want to call it. Global climate change. It doesn't even matter how you want to frame it. Like, this is their argument. There's no climate change. There's no CO2s in the air. And, we're having animals drop off like flies right now. It's unconscionable that they're ignoring what little science we do have.
Yeah. Yeah, I just took a little trip up to northern Washington, a couple of weekends ago, and up there.
Tell them why you did this. This stunned me. This is what had my mouth fall off the chair. I could not believe it. Tell them what you were doing.
So I actually went up there with my son for a school sports event, and while we were up there, I just happened to notice that the dandelions were out in force. I mean, they were really blooming nice up there, and I was horrified. Wherever I looked, I was finding these really grotesque mutations of dandelions that I have never in my life seen before. Not to that extent. I mean, they've been coming on slower, more and more as years go by, but this spring, holy crow. And so I went around, and everywhere I looked, I found them. I found them everywhere. There was not one place that didn't have them. They were on the soccer fields. They were by the riverbank. They were by the railroad track bank. They were in the city in the drainage ditch. They were everywhere. They were everywhere I looked. So I took a bunch of pictures and threw them on the Facebook site Post 311 Mutations. And everybody can get on that and see what I found. But they're all very similar, and people say, "Oh, well, that's just Roundup,"
So you're saying that's a
Roundup.
Facebook page? Excuse me, I want to be clear because it's called 311 Mutations. Does it have a slash in it or not? It's just 311 Mutations.
I think it's Post 311, Post 311 Mutations is what the Facebook page is called.
Okay. I'm gonna try to look for it.
And yeah, I'm probably the biggest poster on that. At least the biggest one posting current photographs of things. And that's another thing I specialize in. I've photographed all sorts of fruit and vegetable and flowers and plants. And I mean, over the last few years, the range of mutations is staggering, absolutely staggering, in trees. And I mean, I've got stories I could tell for a long time on just on the mutations that I found, and stuff that definitely happened from 311. It's not that somebody can go, oh, that's a Roundup thing. I've seen that before. Well, it may be that Roundup is partially involved in it, and that the radiation, what that then is boost whatever mutation ability is there, it boosts it by about a factor of 10. And that seems to be more of the truth, is that if you have something else that is a mutagenic, and then you add the low-level radiation, that effect gets boosted many times. And they were finding that in Chernobyl, actually. I just read a book on Chernobyl, and they were finding that was what the conclusion that they came to there, that radiation is a booster of any other mutagenic thing. So if you have GMOs that might mutate, or herbicides that might mutate, or chemicals in the air that might mutate, radiation will boost all that, and thus we get more cancer. And it makes sense. It really makes sense.
It does make sense. When you look at the genetic mutations, how you said you were looking, people need to pay attention, because what you're going to see is deformed looking flowers, or leaves that their leaves aren't exactly how they should be. They're formed maybe, like I know in my backyard, in the summertime, I grow berries. They should be raspberries, but they don't look like raspberries. They're kind of like a straw, because the strawberries and the raspberries grow together. And there's this one plant where they come up, they should be strawberries, but they look like raspberries. It's kind of a weird.
Yeah.
I stopped eating those things.
Stuff's changing, Stuff is changing.
Well, it's not just that, and it's also from the chemical mutations. This is one of the things I'm discovering. The radioactivity causes one set, and then we're being bombarded by other chemicals that is just as, it's sort of expediting the harm that the radioactivity causes, I think.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it was interesting. I just finished another book in regards to the Marshall Island testing out in Bikini out there. And when the soldiers were there was a certain island they would go to, and they were finding coconuts that looked like bananas, shaped like bananas.
Wow.
Around coconut. And there was a big joke going around with the soldiers. Yeah, we're going to go eat bananas over on this one island. And the island was getting heavy radiation from.
Wait a minute.
All
so the bananas grew out the coconuts grew out in the shape of a banana?
Yes. The coconuts morphed into the shape of a banana. Yeah.
But they were really a coconut on the inside.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. That whole thing about the Marshall Islands is very difficult, because the Marshallese, much like the Native Americans, don't want to talk about their exposure to the radioactivity. They feel ashamed about it. But I find that this is the one thing, even I've noticed this in Fukushima, people feel ashamed that they have cancer. They're embarrassed, as if it's their fault. They don't want to talk about who likes to disclose your personal medical information? You know what I'm saying? That's just very uncomfortable, but this is what we must have these conversations about it, because otherwise there's no documentation. They're not keeping track of who's being harmed by this. That's the...
You're right there. Yeah, the data's quite well hidden for the most part. Yeah.
Now, do you post your data on your Facebook page, or is there a page where you post it?
I haven't really got that totally wrapped up, but I'm working with Mimi Gurman from Nukes Northwest, and she wants to put it on her radcast.org page. And so I'm working to that end of it right now, and I'm getting close. It should be out by, I'm going to say it's going to be out by summertime.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see what happens, like if the Trump administration, if the new Pruitt, I guess it's the Pruitt EPA, if they actually allow the older data to continue to stay out there. That kind of shocks me. It seems to me that maybe the data went out there because there's nobody stopping it, nobody filtering it anymore. That's going to be
Yeah,
very interesting to see if we're going to get a lot more
it will.
whistleblowers because of the way that they're being disrespected. I mean, the way they talk about these, inside these organizations is stunning.
Yeah,
But this
I got
is
a feeling.
this.
I got a feeling that if it's gonna start affecting industry, if that site is going to cause industry to have a hard time getting their nuclear renaissance on board with climate change, then the site will go black.
Hmm.
I think that's going to be the hinge pin.
Hmm. It is a big stunner. It is a big stunner.
Yeah.
I pray to God that we get in competent people before the EPA has a terrible, terrible emergency.
Well,
Because
yeah.
I couldn't imagine with these people. They're so incompetent. Can you imagine if we really did have a nuclear meltdown or something that went really bad?
Yeah, and then you have incompetent people there not knowing what to do, and it's going to just make it even worse. The only thing that'll become will be a big giant hide the pea fiasco.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where of course every nuclear disaster that ever has always been a hide the pea scenario. Always, nobody has ever let that out. And some of the biggest, nastiest radiological releases in the U.S. have been done, and nobody ever said boo. There were some huge releases done at Hanford. There was a thing called the Green Run that happened. Huge amount of radioactive iodine was released as a test.
Yeah, Nancy Newell was telling us about this, but this is what this is the thing about that is they give us the data, but then there's nothing that they do about it. It doesn't matter what they say. Like, okay, even if they told us it's 300, like these people living in Fukushima, 300 count, there's a fire going on in Fukushima, in the forest right next to the Fukushima nuclear power plants where the forest is highly radioactive. And it's kind of
right
suspicious. Yes, right now. It's been going on for 3 days. Big, huge forest fires. It's a national emergency. They're dropping flame retardants on the forest because they can't get in there because the forest fire is the forest is too radioactive. It's the highest levels is in the forest.
I would guess that was lit on purpose. I would guess that was lit on purpose.
Yeah, and it's continuing. They're pretending and this goes hand in hand because it's right next door to where they want the people to move back home, and people sort of don't want to,
Yeah. Well, that's one way to get the radioactivity down. Put it somewhere else. Put it in the air. Let it blow away right our way. So we should be seeing some upticks from that, I would imagine. If that was been going on for 3 days now, we might see something in. Those plumes probably don't really go too high because they're not
Matt,
the temperature that a reactor would be.
Do you know what this is? A light water cooled reactor fuel cycle. Do you know what that is? Light water?
Light water?
Yeah, light water cooled reactor.
Well, there's boiling water. I think that's the same as a boiling water reactor, isn't it? There's a pressurized one. There's a boiling, and there's a light water. I don't know. They use different terminology. Some of these people, some of the manufacturers. So it may be the same as something else. But basically, the two older types are the boilings and the power and the pressurized. And the boiling one, those are the earliest ones by GE. I think the pressurized one is the Westinghouse design.
Well, this is the weird part.
The light water one, I think that's also a pressurized one, I believe. Don't quote me on that, though.
Well, the reason I'm asking is I went to the EPA and just typed in relevant things, and there's a scoping assessment of the environmental health risks associated with accidents in the light LWR supporting fuel cycle, and the LWR is light water cooled cycle. So when you click on see reports, it doesn't give you anything at all. And then when you click on how to obtain a report, order a copy. I wonder how much they're going to charge us. Oh my God.
Order a copy. Here we go. Yeah. So the data that should be free now will cost us money.
Well, I guess
the corporate holding.
I guess it's not. I guess they're not charging us, but they want to know who's getting it, because in order to get this report, you have to give them your name, your email address, phone number, and where it's from.
Right.
Keeping names and tracking people all the way around. It's insane. Wow. Well, I am going to order this. I think I'll just order it because really, they know who I am. I'm not really afraid of them.
Yeah. That may be available on the internet too, rather than just EPA is my bet. Because I've seen a lot of stuff very similar to what you just said. I can't tell you what it was. I don't recall, but there's a lot of, just throw in those search words, and see what happens, and you'll get a lot of hits.
So Matt, this has kind of become like a little part-time job for you, hasn't it?
More like full-time.
Really?
To be honest with you, yeah. To be honest with you, it's been full-time. I could not really hold a job down and do what I'm doing right now. I couldn't do it, and I made that choice. I made the choice to either get a job and pull some money in, or I'm going to hinge on some savings that I have at this point and really concentrate on this and try to do something good for the people, and this country,
Wow. Well, I look forward to having your stuff up on the No Nukes Northwest website, because that would be awesome. And is it going to be like a continual feed where it'll link into where you guys automatically can update it pretty easily? I think that's called an RSP feed.
Yeah, I'm not sure how exactly that's gonna work.
Okay.
In that respect, but she will have data on that site for all of the West Coast cities, and it'll be beta only data. So the beta is the one that now they've cut out from the system. They don't have that anymore.
Well, isn't beta the most harmful? Isn't beta the one that's really bad?
It's the one that, it's probably the one that's going to get us first, if anything. It's strontium is the big one. Strontium 90 is a big.
So they're not even giving us the information on the strontium 90?
No, they're not.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
How long
has
that been? How long has that been since they cut that information out?
Well, they've been phasing it out. A lot of the beta was ended. A lot of it. I mean, the vast majority of it was ended in 2011, just as the plumes hit, or just prior to the plumes. So what they did, they waited and it hit the West Coast, and they saw what it was. They let the West Coast run a little bit longer on the beta data, down a few months before they chopped it, and they chopped it all around summertime, around August.
Wow.
When the really, really big plumes hit. And then the other ones more
Matt, we have about 10 seconds. I have to jump in. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. I hope you're coming back with us. We have you calendared in for next month. Everybody, put your courage feet on. This conversation should advise you that we need everyone. Thank you for joining us. Spread the word, and we'll talk with you tomorrow.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.